Riddick. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel where we bring the most iconic action stories to life. Today we are diving into a true movie story, Riddick. Riddick is a 2013 science fiction action film written and directed by David Twohy, based on the character Richard B. Riddick by Jim and Ken Wheat. It is the third installment in the Chronicles of Riddick film series and a sequel to both Pitch Black, 2000, and The Chronicles of Riddick, 2004. Vin Diesel reprises his role as the titular character alongside Jordi Molla, Nable, Katie Sackhoff, Dave Bautista, Bokeem Woodbine, Raul Trujillo, and Kyle Urban. In the film, notorious murderer Riddick is betrayed and left for dead on a desolate planet and uses his instincts to survive. He eventually teams up with mercenaries arriving to capture him to escape from a larger threat. Riddick was released in the United States on September 6, 2013. Critics considered it a return to form for the series, and it became a moderate box office success compared to its predecessor. A fourth film, entitled Riddick, Furya, is in development. 5 years after Kyra's death, Riddick has become uneasy in his role as Lord Marshal of the Necromonger fleet. His refusal to swear into the Necromonger faith has caused dissent among his subjects. After the latest attempt on his life, Riddick strikes a deal with Commander Vaco, the location of Furya and a ship to take him there, in exchange for Vaco succeeding him as the next Lord Marshal so that he can achieve transcendence. Led by Vaco's aide, Crone, Riddick and a group of necromongers arrive on a desolate planet. Realizing that it is not Furya, Riddick kills most of his escorts when they attempt to assassinate him. Crone causes a landslide and buries Riddick alive. Riddick emerges from the rubble with a broken leg, which he sets and splints while fending off native predators, vulture-like flying animals, packs of jackal-like beasts, and giant venomous scorpion-like water-welling mud demons. Needing time to heal, Riddick hides himself within some abandoned ruins. After he's fully healed, Riddick notices a vast savanna beyond some rocky cliffs, but the only passage through is impeded by several muddy pools infested with mud demons. He begins injecting himself with mud demon venom to build an immunity and constructs improvised melee weapons, as well as raising and training an orphan jackal beast pup. He kills the mud demons blocking his entrance and reaches the savanna. After finding a mercenary station, Riddick notices a series of approaching storms and concludes they will unleash a dangerous threat. Riddick activates an emergency beacon at the station, which broadcasts his identity to mercenary groups within the area. 2 ships arrive in answer to the beacon, the first led by violent and unstable Santana, with second-in-command Diaz, Preacher Luna, and hunters Falco, Rubio, Vargas, and Nunez, the second led by Colonel Boss Johns, second-in-command, and marksman Dahl, tracker Loxby and gunner Moss. Riddick leaves them a message promising they will all die unless they leave one of their ships and depart the planet on the other. Rubio, Nunez, and Falco are killed by Riddick during the first night, forcing a reluctant Santana to cooperate with Johns' team. Riddick later steals power nodes from each of the team's ships and approaches Johns and Santana to strike a deal for their return. However, the conversation turns into an ambush as Dahl shoots Riddick with several rounds of horse tranquilizer, and Riddick's jackal beast is shot and killed by Santana. At the station, Johns interrogates Riddick about the fate of his son, William B. When the storms reach the station, Riddick's threat is revealed as thousands of mud demons emerge from hibernation underground, awakened by the rainwater, and besiege the station, killing Loxba and Moss. Johns agrees to release Riddick to locate the hidden power cells, but Santana attempts to kill Riddick because he is worth more dead than alive and because Riddick promised to kill Santana if set free. Riddick, with one leg free, beheads Santana with his own machete. The group then releases Riddick on the condition he retrieves the nodes and each party gets a ship. They fight their way to the ships, and Vargas is killed by a mud demon. Johns, Diaz, and Riddick leave the ship together on the hoverbikes to retrieve the power nodes. During their journey, Diaz crashes Johns' bike over an embankment. Johns is then picked up by Riddick. After they reach the power nodes, Riddick reveals Johns' son's morphine addiction and his attempts to use a child as bait. Diaz attacks Riddick and Johns, but Riddick fights and kills him. As Diaz dies, he shoots and disables the last hoverbike. Riddick and Johns fend off an endless horde of mud demons while running back to the station. Riddick is severely wounded, and Johns takes both nodes and abandons him. Riddick begins to fight the advancing demons and climbs a rock spire. When it seems he is about to be killed, Johns arrives in a repowered ship and shoots the creatures while Dahl descends to rescue Riddick. Given the other ship, Riddick praises Johns for being a better man than his son and departs into deep space. Cast: Vin Diesel as Richard B. Riddick, last of the Furyan race and notorious criminal outlaw. Riddick lets himself get complacent in his time as Lord Marshal and is suddenly forced to rediscover his animal side to survive. Matt Nable as Colonel Boss Johns, a professional mercenary whose son William J. Johns was killed during the events of Pitch Black. Johns pursues Riddick in order to get answers about how his son died. He prides himself on being an organized professional and runs his crew efficiently. Jordi Molla as Santana, a bounty hunter whose crew was the first to arrive in pursuit of Riddick. He bristles at the arrival of Johns and refuses to accept help until he has no choice. Katie Sackhoff as Dahl, Johns' lieutenant. She is a tough and capable mercenary, and the crew's sniper. She and Santana instantly dislike each other and she is forced to assert herself over him after Johns puts her in charge of Santana's crew. Dave Bautista as Diaz, Santana's lieutenant. He is quiet and reserved in contrast to the loud and obnoxious Santana, however he makes snide remarks at times. Bokeem Woodbine as Moss, one of Johns' crew who has a quiet encounter with Riddick that leaves him shaken. Raul Trujillo as Loxba, a member of Johns' crew who has encountered the mud creatures before. Conrad Pla as Vardas, one of Santana's men who is highly superstitious and paranoid. Nolan Gerard Font as Luna, a Christian whom Santana refers to as his good luck charm. The voice of reason, he repeatedly tries to convince everyone to take Riddick's offer and leave rather than fight. Danny Blanco Hall as Falco, member of Santana's crew. Noah Danby as Nunez, member of Santana's crew. Neil Napier as Rubio, member of Santana's crew. Kyle Urban as Commander Siberius Vaco, a necromonger commander who desires the position of Lord Marshal. Alex Branson as Lex Brandman. Andreas Apogus as Crone, a necromonger who betrays Riddick and leaves him to die. Additionally, singer Carrie Hilson makes a cameo appearance as Santana's prisoner, who was being kept as a sexual slave and is eventually killed by him after Luna cuts her loose. Rumors of a third film in the Chronicles of Riddick series had circulated since 2006. At first, he assumed that the film would be an independent, low-budget production, rather than being released by Universal Studios as the other films in the series had been. Despite the second film's tepid reception, Diesel and Toohey remained optimistic about a third film, pushing it toward completion. "Everyone knows I love the Riddick character and I'm always working on it," Diesel asserted. "It just takes 5 years to make another one because David Toohey and I are so precise about it." In 2006, Diesel agreed to make a cameo in Universal's film The Fast and the Furious, Tokyo Drift in exchange for the ownership to the rights to the Riddick franchise and character. Over the next 4 years, Diesel periodically posted information on his own Facebook page updating fans on the film's progress. In November 2009, shortly after Toohey had finished the script, he announced that pre-production work was underway. 7. In April 2010, a review of the Riddick screenplay, that was then subtitled Dead Man Stalking, appeared on the Coming Attractions website. Free from the constraints of delivering a PG-13 movie, the dialogue in Dead Man Stalking is more suited to a film like Training Day. The marks we meet are hard-living people, not those wash-out fake-out space marks from a film like Alien Resurrection, wrote reviewer Patrick Soriol. 8. On February 9, 2010, Diesel confirmed in an update on his Facebook page that one of the locations used in the upcoming sequel would be the White Desert in Furya, Egypt. He mentioned the terrain features, unique to the area, would lend to the off-planet atmosphere of the film. 9. On March 13, 2011, Diesel released a video on his official Facebook page in which he and director David Toohey talk about the proposed third film. They reaffirmed that the movie will be rated R, like the first one, pitch black, a priority for them, and they plan to shoot it lean and quickly. 10. In September 2011, it was announced that Kyle Urban would reprise his role as Vaco from the Chronicles of Riddick. 11. In January 2012, it was announced that Katie Sackhoff and Matt Nable had also joined the cast. 12. Since they did not have enough money to shoot the film in its entirety, Diesel had to mortgage his house, obtain loans, and spend most of his personal money on the production of the film. I had to leverage my house, Diesel said. If we didn't finish the film, I would be homeless. 13. The first image of Vin Diesel on the film's set was released on January 20, 2012. 14. Filming began in January 2012 and concluded at the end of March 2012. 15. The film entered post-production in April 2012. 15. The teaser trailer for the film was released on March 22, 2013, via Vin Diesel's official Facebook page. David Toohey promoting Riddick at the 2013 San Diego Comic-Con. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 58% of 173 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of May 4, 10. The website's consensus reads, "It may not win the franchise many new converts, but this back-to-basics outing brings Riddick fans more of the brooding sci-fi action they've come to expect." 16. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 49 out of 100, based on 35 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. 17. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B on an A+ to F scale. 18. Alonso Durald of The Wrap gave the film a negative review, saying, "If you were to make a comedy about an actor who makes cheesy sci-fi action movies, and you needed a hilarious clip of his work that underscored the awfulness of his output, just about any 30-second segment of Riddick would do the trick." 19. Tom Huddleston of Time Out gave the film 2 out of 5 stars, saying, "It's flavorless. The aliens are unscary and easily dispatched, then's too silent to be interesting, and the other characters are either dull or offensive." 20. Scott Foundas of Variety gave the film a positive review, saying, "An improbable but very enjoyable sequel that recaptures much of the stripped-down intensity of Diesel and director David Toohey's franchise starter Pitch Black." 21. Justin Lowe of The Hollywood Reporter gave the film a negative review, saying, "Faithful to the template if not the spirit of previous installments, this flabby second sequel barely manages to advance Riddick's considerable personal mythology." 22. Keith Statskiewicz of Entertainment Weekly gave the film a C+, saying, "Toohey succeeds in staging moments both tense and funny, but they're fewer and farther between than one would hope, and the dialogue is served up with a heaping helping of cheese, especially when delivered in Diesel's low-frequency growl. 23. In his review for RogerEbert.com, O.D. Henderson gave the film 2.5 stars, noting that the absurd level of Riddick love is the film's most entertaining characteristic, and describing Doll as a super butch lesbian who provides Riddick with naked boobs. 24. Riddick grossed $42,025,135 in North America and $56,312,160 in other countries, for a worldwide total of $98,337,295. In North America, the film opened to number 1 in its first weekend, with $19,030,375.25. In its second weekend, the film dropped to number 3, grossing an additional $6,841,826. In its third weekend, the film dropped to number 8, grossing $3,656,620.27. In its fourth weekend, the film dropped to number 13, grossing $1,607,145.28. Riddick was released on DVD and Blu-ray on January 14, 2014. The film grossed an additional $23,026,441 through domestic DVD and Blu-ray sales. 29. Differences in plot from theatrical release. A number of additions to the plot are included in the director's cut of the movie, which was released on Blu-ray and DVD on January 14, 2014, 30, and provided a longer story than the theatrical version. 31, 32, 33, 34. The extended cut of the movie is approximately 8 minutes longer, 32, than the theatrical version and includes extended and additional scenes not seen in the theatrical version. In the extended version, there is an additional scene that takes place aboard the Necromonger capital ship where Riddick kills Crone and finds out that Vaco has crossed the threshold into the Underverse, seen as a large hole in space surrounded by gas. Riddick looks out the window as he is told that Vaco has gone to achieve transcendence, where he is both dead and alive. 31, 32. Sequel. On January 29, 2014, Diesel had announced on his Facebook page that Universal wishes to develop a fourth Riddick film, prompted by robust DVD sales of the most recent film in the series. 35. In April 2016, Diesel confirmed that he and Trujillo were developing a fourth Riddick movie titled Furya and a spin-off TV series titled Mark City. In May 2016, he explained that production on Furya may begin in early 2017. In a video, Diesel asked, "Are you guys excited to hear about Furya? Do you want to know where it all began with that dark character Riddick?" David Trujillo confirmed that the new film would be rated R. The posts did not elaborate on how, if at all, Mark City would be connected to the upcoming film. 36. By July 2019, the script was completed and the title was changed to Riddick, Furya. 37. The story focuses on the protagonist finally returning to his homeworld, a place he barely remembers and one he fears might be left in ruins by the Necromongers. Once there, he finds other Furyans fighting for their existence against a new enemy. 38. By May 2022, it was reported that Trujillo had rewritten the screenplay alongside original creators Jim and Ken Wheat, and that it was completed in 2021. In May 2022, an Instagram post from Vin Diesel also suggested that pre-production has moved on to the storyboarding phase. Shooting was previously scheduled for late 2023 with film release in 2024 or 2025 at the earliest. 39. The fourth installment, now simply titled Riddick, Furya, was officially announced in February 2023. In May 2024, it was announced that Riddick, Furya would begin production on August 26, 2024, and that the film would shoot in Germany, Spain, and the UK, with David Toohey attached to direct. Samantha Vincent and Diesel will be producers. Richard B. Riddick, commonly known as Riddick, is a fictional character and the protagonist of the Chronicles of Riddick series. This series includes the animated short film Dark Fury and the video games Escape from Butcher Bay and Assault on Dark Athena. Actor Vin Diesel has portrayed Riddick in all film and video game adaptations. Within the series, Riddick is depicted as having a wide range of skills, including exceptional mobility, stealth, combat abilities, survival in harsh conditions, prison escape, and piloting. Despite his criminal background, he occasionally performs moral or heroic actions, often against his own survivalist instincts. Originally shown as a human in Pitch Black, Riddick's race is later revealed to be Furyan in subsequent sequels. The Furyans are a warrior race nearly exterminated by a military campaign that left their home planet, Furya, desolate. Riddick is one of the last surviving members of this race. His eyes, a defining feature, allow him to see clearly in the dark, a trait associated with a specific caste of Furyans known as Alpha Furyans. In Pitch Black, he implies that his eyes were surgically altered, but this is later attributed to his Furyan heritage. To protect his eyes from bright light, he wears tinted welding goggles. Riddick's past includes a role as a member of a security force, eventually becoming a soldier. This background contributes to his complex character, blending elements of an anti-hero with occasional heroic actions. 1. Biography. Early life. Riddick was born on the planet Furya. Before his birth, a necromonger officer named Sylah, who would later become the Lord Marshal, consulted an elemental seer. The seer foretold that a Furyan male would be born who would ultimately lead to Xylah's downfall. In response, Xylah launched an attack on Furya, attempting to massacre all male infants, even personally strangling newborns with their umbilical cords. Riddick was among those targeted but managed to survive the ordeal. Citation needed. In his later life, Riddick repressed memories of the massacre on Furya. He believed that his mother had attempted to strangle him at birth and abandoned him in a trash bin behind a liquor store. Despite these repressed memories, he periodically received visions and messages from Shira, a surviving Furyan. 2. Pitch Black. Main article, Pitch Black, film. In the premiere installment of the Chronicles of Riddick franchise, Riddick is introduced as a notorious convict being transported to a penal institution by a bounty hunter named William J. Johns. Johns, posing as a police officer, travels with a group of sellers aboard the transport ship Hunter Gratzna. His objective is to safely deliver Riddick to a prison colony and claim the substantial bounty on him. Citation needed. During the journey, the ship passes through the tail of a comet while on autopilot, causing it to crash land on an unknown planet with 3 suns. The survivors soon find themselves battling for their lives against a predatory species known as bioraptors. By the end of the film, only 3 survivors remain: Riddick, a young girl named Jack, and a man named Amon. Citation needed. Dark Fury. Main article, Dark Fury. Shortly after escaping the planet from Pitch Black, Riddick, Jack, and Amon are picked up by a mercenary spacecraft. Riddick tries to hide his identity from the mercenaries by impersonating William J. Johns over the intercom. However, the mercenaries quickly identify him through voice-print recognition. Citation needed. Captured by the mercenaries, the trio learns that their captors have unusual plans for Riddick. The ship's owner, Antonia Chillingsworth, collects notorious criminals, freezing them and displaying them as statues, which she considers art. Although frozen, the criminals remain alive and conscious. Chillings views Riddick as the ultimate masterpiece for her collection. Citation needed. Riddick, Jack, and a mom must fight their way through Chillingsworth's army of human and alien creatures to avoid a fate worse than death. After overcoming most of the mercenaries on the ship, the trio takes one of Antonia's shuttles and heads for New Mecca. At one point, the navigation system suggests a possible course for Furya, but Riddick ultimately leaves Jack and Imam at New Mecca before departing for the planet UV6. Citation needed. The Chronicles of Riddick. Main article: The Chronicles of Riddick. 5 years later, Riddick remains in hiding on an Arctic planet known as UV6, characterized by its harsh ultraviolet light. During this time, the mom learns that his home planet, Helion Prime, is threatened by an impending invasion from the Necromongers, a fanatical religious crusade. Remembering Riddick's story about his Furyan origins, Imam reveals Riddick's location to the leaders of Helion Prime. Citation needed. Initially, Riddick is reluctant to become involved in the conflict between the Necromongers and the worlds they seek to conquer. However, after Imam is killed, Riddick embarks on a mission to avenge him. With the assistance of Jack, who has abandoned that name in favor of Kyra while in prison, Riddick ultimately overthrows the Necromonger leader, the Lord Marshal, and assumes his position as the new leader of the Necromongers. Citation needed. Riddick. Main article: Riddick, film. Dissatisfied with his role as Lord Marshal, Riddick sets out to find Furya, but instead, he is abandoned on a desolate planet. Stranded, he discovers that a deadly storm is approaching, which will provide cover for numerous predators. To escape, Riddick uses the communication system from a mercenary outpost to lure 2 ships to the planet, intending to commandeer one. However, his plan becomes complicated when one of the arriving mercenaries turns out to be the father of William J. Johns, his old adversary. Citation needed. As the storm nears, Riddick forces the mercenaries to cooperate with him to survive. Despite their initial hostility, Riddick is eventually surrounded by enemies and nearly killed. Unexpectedly, the elder Johns rescues him and allows him to leave the planet. Before departing, Riddick acknowledges that Johns is a better man than his son. Citation needed. Powers and abilities. I shine. See also, Tapetum lucidum. In Pitch Black, Riddick says that while imprisoned in Butcher Bay, he received eye surgery, referred to as a surgical shine job, from a doctor who granted him permanent night vision in exchange for 20 menthol cools, cigarettes. This procedure made his eyes highly sensitive to normal light, necessitating the use of welding goggles for protection, although he is occasionally seen without them in normally lit environments. In the flash review on the pitchblack.com website, Riddick undergoes the eye shine surgery to gain an advantage after encountering humanoids called Shiners, who also possessed enhanced night vision. These Shiners call Riddick Dark Eye and have had similar surgeries to navigate the dark areas of the Ursa Luna prison, where guards rarely venture. The surgery is depicted as being performed by a bovine veterinarian in a prison facility where Riddick has just arrived and is already planning his escape. Riddick chooses to forego anesthesia for the painful procedure, which involves cutting the cornea and drilling into the eye to inject a reflective substance behind the retina. The quoted cost is 1,000 credits, but having no cash, Riddick offers a pack of cool cigarettes as a down payment and takes welding goggles from the facility. Citation needed. The video game The Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay, a prequel to Pitch Black, provides additional context. In the game, after helping a character named Pope Joe retrieve his blessed voice box, Riddick receives stitches for an injury. Pokjo advises Riddick on how to escape and warns him not to trust his eyes. At that moment, a ghostly voice informs Riddick that he has been blind for far too long and grants him a gift. This voice belongs to a character named Shira, who serves as a spiritual guide, helping Riddick awaken his dormant furya abilities. This moment marks the acquisition of his eyeshine. In the Chronicles of Riddick film, Jack/Kyra confronts Riddick, revealing that during her imprisonment, she discovered that no one could perform a surgical shine job for any price, accusing Riddick of lying about how he gained his night vision. A real-life procedure somewhat similar to Riddick's fictional eyeshine, involving light amplification, has been patented. 3-4. Wrath of the Furyans. In addition to aiding Riddick in unlocking his eyeshine, the character Shira helps him discover his ability to unleash a powerful energy wave. This ability is depicted in the director's cut of the Chronicles of Riddick. During a pivotal scene, Shira places her hand on Riddick's chest, leaving a glowing blue handprint, and states, "This mark carries the anger of an entire race, but it's going to hurt." Subsequently, either immediately after being struck by Vako's energy handgun or just before the weapon discharges, Riddick releases a large blast of blue energy. This blast emanates from Riddick, seemingly guided by Shira, and kills the surrounding necromongers. This formidable energy wave ability is also referenced off-screen in the video game Escape from Butcher Bay. Shira's interventions highlight Riddick's latent furyan powers, which are pivotal in his battles against the necromongers and other adversaries. Other appearances. Riddick made his first appearance outside of the film Pitch Black in the gaming world as a guest character in Fallout Tactics. In this game, he appears in a special encounter titled Pitch Black, reflecting his movie origin. Like his cinematic counterpart, Riddick is portrayed as a stealth-focused melee fighter with advanced hand-to-hand combat skills and the ability to see in the dark. Citation needed. Additionally, Riddick has been featured as a playable character in the Xbox game Death Row. As a member of the Convex team, he possesses the highest levels of strength and aggression among recruitable players. However, he also has one of the lowest team play ratings in the game. Citation needed. A parody version of the Riddick character has been the protagonist in the Time Splitters video game franchise. Citation needed. Richard B. Riddick first made his debut in the Shockwave prequel comic Pitch Black, Slam City, which was released on the official Pitch Black website a month before the movie premiered. Since then, the character has been consistently portrayed by actor Vin Diesel in all subsequent appearances across various media platforms. Citation needed. In Jim and Ken Wheat's original script for Pitch Black, the Riddick character was a woman named Teres Creek. A protagonist, from ancient Greek Pyro Meta Tau Alpha Gamma Meta Nu Iota Sigma Tau protagonists, one who plays the first part, chief actor, 1, 2, 3, is the main character of a story. The protagonist makes key decisions that affect the plot, primarily influencing the story and propelling it forward, and is often the character who faces the most significant obstacles and choices. If a story contains a subplot, or is a narrative made up of several stories, then each subplot may have its own protagonist. 4. The protagonist is the character whose fate is most closely followed by the reader or audience, and who is opposed by the antagonist. The antagonist provides obstacles and complications and creates conflicts that test the protagonist, revealing the strengths and weaknesses of the protagonist's character, and having the protagonist develop as a result. A particularly noble, virtuous, or accomplished protagonist is commonly called a hero, though the terms are not synonyms. The earliest known example of a protagonist can be found in the Epic of Gilgamesh, dated around the 3rd millennium BCE, 6. However, the term originated only later with the dramatic performances of ancient Greece. At first these involved merely dancing and recitation by the chorus, but then, according to Aristotle's Poetics, a poet named Thespis introduced the idea of one actor stepping out and engaging in a dialogue with the chorus. This was the invention of tragedy, and occurred about 536 BC. 7. Then the poet Aeschylus, in his plays, introduced a second actor, inventing the idea of dialogue between two characters. Sophocles then wrote plays that included a third actor, 8, 9, 10, 11. A description of the protagonist's origin cited that during the early period of Greek drama, the protagonist served as the author, the director, and the actor, and that these roles were only separated and allocated to different individuals later. 12. There is also a claim that the poet did not assign or create the protagonist, as well as other terms for actors such as deuteragonist and tritagonist, primarily because he only gave actors their appropriate part. 13. However, these actors were assigned their specific areas at the stage, with the protagonist always entering from the middle door, or that the dwelling of the deuteragonist, second most important character, should be on the right hand, and the tritagonist, third most important character, the left. 13. Though many people equate protagonists with the term hero and possessing heroic qualities, it is not necessary, as even villainous characters can be protagonists. For example, Michael Corleone from The Godfather, 1972 to 1990, film series, 1978 to 1983. In some cases, the protagonist is not a human. In Richard Adams' novel Watership Down, a group of anthropomorphized rabbits, led by the protagonist Hazel, escape their warren after seeing a vision of its destruction, starting a perilous journey to find a new home. The Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay is a 2004 action-adventure stealth game developed by Starbreeze Studios and Tigan Studios and published by Vivendi Universal Games. Released for the Xbox and Microsoft Windows in 2004, the game's story is a prequel to the futuristic science fiction film Pitch Black. Actor Vin Diesel, who was involved in the game's development, reprises his role as that film's protagonist, Richard B. Riddick. The game follows Riddick, the anti-hero of the two films Pitch Black and The Chronicles of Riddick, as he attempts to escape from a maximum security prison called Butcher Bay. Escape from Butcher Bay's designers focused on exploring Riddick's character in a prison break setting to differentiate the game from the film. The game's influences include the film Escape from Alcatraz, and video games such as Half-Life, Thief, The Dark Project, and Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell. Escape from Butcher Bay received acclaim by critics, who lauded its graphics and its implementation of stealth, action, and adventure elements. Some critics consider the game superior to the film, a rarity among film tie-in games. However, they commonly lamented its brevity and lack of multiplayer components. The game is cited as one of the greatest video games ever made. It went on to win several accolades, including the Golden Joystick Award for Unsung Hero Game of the Year and the Spike Video Game Award for Best Game Based on a Movie. In 2009, the game was included in The Chronicles of Riddick, Assault on Dark Athena, with enhanced visuals. Gameplay: a pair of human arms with brown tape on them holding a screwdriver in the right hand. A man working on a machine, wearing a green jumpsuit and a black shirt, is in front of the arms with blood splatter on the wall to his left. Riddick in stealth mode, preparing to stab an enemy with a screwdriver. In Escape from Butcher Bay, the player takes control of protagonist Richard B. Riddick as he attempts to break out of Butcher Bay prison. 1. The game incorporates various elements from video game genres such as first-person shooter, adventure, and stealth. 2, 3, and is played primarily from a first-person perspective, though the camera switches to a third-person perspective during certain scenes. 4. Unlike many first-person shooters, the game contains no head-up display wink with a frown. 2. 5. On-screen cues are limited to flashes when a new weapon is selected. 6. And small, white boxes that display the player character's health when damage is taken. 1. Health can be replenished in designated areas throughout the game. 7. By finding cigarette packs hidden in levels, the player can unlock concept art and video files. 8. The player may interact with and receive quests from the prison's residents. 9. And earns information, tools, and other rewards by completing quests. 10. Violent conflict often occurs between the player, inmates, and prison guards. 1. 9. The player attacks with Riddick's bare hands, or with improvised weapons such as shivs and clubs. Combos are created by stringing together punches. A DNA scanning security system initially prevents Riddick from using firearms, but a limited arsenal later becomes available. A stealth mode is activated when the player character crouches, allowing the player to move silently and tinting the edges of the screen blue when the player is hidden. 4. While in stealth mode, the player can drag bodies out of sight and hide from enemies. 4. 10. The mode grants attacks that quickly kill enemies wink with a frown. 12. The player may drop on enemies from above, or execute them from behind. 1. 12. During the game, Riddick acquires eye shine, allowing him to see in the dark but temporarily blinding him if used in brightly lit areas. Plot, setting and characters. Escape from Butcher Bay is set in the futuristic science fiction universe of the Chronicles of Riddick franchise. 10. And is a prequel to the film Pitch Black. 14. The game takes place inside Butcher Bay, a maximum security prison from which no prisoner has escaped. 1. 3. The facility, constructed on a barren planet, contains 3 increasingly secure holding areas and a subterranean mining operation. 11. The game's protagonist is Richard B. Riddick, reprised by Vin Diesel, a murderer recently confined in Butcher Bay. 6. 12. Riddick is resourceful and seeks to break out of the prison by any means necessary. 3. His capturer is the bounty hunter William J. Johns, reprised by Cole Hauser. The two have had previous encounters. 6. Butcher Bay's warden is a man named Hoxie Dwight Schultz, 12, 15. While Abbott, Exhibit, is a prison guard disliked by the inmates. 1. 8. The inmate Pope Joe Willis. Burks 2 is an insane old man who lives in the sewer tunnels beneath the prison. 8. 16. Story. The opening cinematic shows Riddick in hiding, having grown out his hair and beard, before the opening scene of the Chronicles of Riddick movie. He hunts an animal and after killing it, a disembodied voice starts talking to him asking him where he got his eyes. He states that he received them from a slam preacher, and this causes him to remember his time at Butcher Bay. The game takes place in a flashback. Another opening cinematic takes place in which Riddick is being transported for collection on the bounty. He and Johns have a brief conversation in which Riddick tells Johns that there is no way he is going to get the price he wants. Riddick wakes up as they land and stands out front of Butcher Bay waiting for the warden. He sneaks up behind Johns and breaks his neck and proceeds to escape. After getting his hands on a gun, he goes through the ventilation ducts and seemingly escapes into the desert. Everything fades to white as Riddick hears Johns saying, "Rise and shine, Riddick." It turns out this escape was simply a dream. Riddick wakes up and Johns escorts him off the ship. Johns meets with Hoxie to negotiate his pay. 12, while Abbott escorts Riddick to his cell in the single max security area. After making enemies with and killing a gang leader named Rust, Steve Blum, Riddick familiarizes himself with the facility and soon instigates a riot, During the confusion, he escapes into the prison's sewer system. Armed with a shotgun and a dying flashlight, Riddick discovers he is not alone in the sewers. Fighting through the sewers against mutant dwellers, 13, Riddick eventually meets Pope Joe, for whom he retrieves a lost radio, which Joe calls a blessed voicebox. A woman named Shira, Kristen Lehman, 16, tells Riddick that he has been blind too long, and he gains his trademark eyeshine, night vision, 8. Afterwards, he accuses Pope Joe of tampering with his eyes. Joe says that he merely treated Riddick's injured arm. Riddick then continues his escape, while using the eyeshine to his advantage. After emerging from a manhole in the showers of the guard living quarters, Riddick uses a guard uniform to blend in as he makes his way to the spaceport and his chance an escape. Realizing he requires a guard to get through the retinal scanner that locks the doors to the spaceport, Riddick decides to go after Abbott and take his eyes. He gains access to Abbott's apartment by telling him there is a delivery for him. A firefight ensues, and after that, as Abbott bleeds out on the floor, Riddick moves in for the kill but is stopped by Johns. Riddick is captured and transferred to the Double Max security area. Gaining the trust of the inmates by participating in fighting matches, Riddick eventually kills the champion of the fighting matches, a guard named Bam. This leads him to be taken to a room where no surveillance is seen and several guards await to kill Riddick. Abbott walks into the room, fully healed, holding a baseball bat. Shira returns to him and tells him that the fury of all of his kind is within him, and he can release it if he chooses. Riddick lets out a loud scream as a blast of energy called the Rage of Furya kills all the guards around him except Abbott, who hides and then panics and attacks Riddick. Riddick kills Abbott, steals his T-card, and proceeds to find another way to escape. Using a secret entrance to an elevator, he infiltrates a mining facility. He meets an inmate of great influence in the area named Jagger Valance, Ron Perlman, 16, who wishes to escape with him. He makes a bomb and plants it in a mining site with a massive gas leak. However, Riddick is discovered and caught by the guards. During his transfer to another section, the prison is disrupted by an outbreak of creatures called Xeno, due to the bomb Riddick planted, in order to create the confusion necessary for his escape, and Riddick attempts to escape with Valance. His plans are foiled again by Johns. After a fist fight, Riddick and Johns are both shot by Valance, who only meant to hit Johns, and Valance is killed by the guards. After meeting again with the warden and telling him that he is just getting started, Riddick is placed in the Triple Max area, where inmates are kept in cryonic sleep. 11. They are awakened daily for 2 minutes of exercise. During this time, Riddick discovers a flaw in the system and escapes. He then hijacks a large robot and fights his way through Butcher Bay to reach Hoxie, 17. Tired of dealing with the prison officials, Johns helps Riddick to elude the guards. Riddick knocks Johns out and flies the ship into the warden's office. The warden calls in 2 robot guards with cloaking abilities and Riddick defeats them. After Hoxie surrenders, Riddick receives the codes to Hoxie's ship and Riddick and Johns escape disguised as a guard and prisoner. 2 guards enter Hoxie's room, where Hoxie is bound and covered in Riddick's former attire with a gun tied to him and aimed at the door. The guards mistake Hoxie for Riddick and kill him. Riddick and Johns take off in Hoxie's ship, ending the game. Development: a bald, multiracial man in a gray suit. Turned at a 45-degree angle from the camera, he squints in the direction of an off-camera light source, which illuminates his face. Actor Vin Diesel reprised his role as Riddick for Escape from Butcher Bay, and assisted in the game's development. Escape from Butcher Bay was co-developed by Swedish company Starbreeze Studios and the Vin Diesel-founded Tigan Studios, and published by Vivendi Games and Tigan Studios. Universal Studios Consumer Products Group granted the Chronicles of Riddick license to Universal Interactive. Both companies were owned by Vivendi Universal. The game was announced in March 2004 as an Xbox title. Tigan Studios' Cas Lazura said, "The game features an original storyline that provides insight into how Riddick evolved into such a complex character." 14. In contrast to other film tie-in games, which often closely follow the events of their source material, the development team of Escape from Butcher Bay focused on differentiating the game from the Chronicles of Riddick. 18. They sought to explore Riddick's character in a prison break setting, and took inspiration from films such as Escape from Alcatraz. Starbreeze was also inspired by video games such as GoldenEye 007 and the Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell series. 19. 20. The opening sequence, in which Riddick is escorted into Butcher Bay. 21. Is a tribute to Half-Life. The game's hand-to-hand combat was inspired by Punch-Out!, 19. And the stealth mechanics, such as hiding in the shadows and leaning, were inspired by that of Thief. The Dark Project and Deus Ex. Starbreeze focused solely on developing the game's single-player mode, and did not include multiplayer. The company believed that such a mode would require a design team twice as large and another year of development. 2022. Vin Diesel, the lead actor of the Chronicles of Riddick, provided his voice and likeness for Riddick. He and director David Twohy also contributed to the game's plot and character design. The game's story was developed in conjunction with the films. 23. Per the filmmaker's instructions, the designers made the origin of Riddick's eyeshine vague. 24. Diesel offered guidance to the game's lead writer during voice recording sessions. This included dialogue rewrites to reduce Riddick's lines, as Diesel believed the character spoke too often. 25. Starbreeze intended for Escape from Butcher Bay to feature more complex role-playing game systems, but feedback from Diesel and game testers dissuaded them. Starbreeze senior producer Peter Wannett said, "We tried to limit the number of really hard or really intricate RPG elements, and that was a choice because we wanted the game to be playable." 25. Other removed features include an electric bullwhip for the guard Abbott, and a 25-minute final boss fight. 19. 26. A PlayStation 2 version that was in development was cancelled so the company could focus on the Xbox version. 27. The game uses normal mapping, which allows detailed textures to be drawn on models with lower polygon counts. This increases visual fidelity, without sacrificing higher frame rates. 28. It also featured dynamic lighting with per-pixel stencil shadowing and self-shadowing. 29. Escape from Butcher Bay was completed in 18 months. 18. Vin Diesel promoted the game and the accompanying movie at the May 2004 Electronic Entertainment Expo, E3, video game convention. 30. The game was released in North America on June 1, 2004, shortly before the Chronicles of Riddick. 31. North American pre-orders of the game included a DVD of promotional content, such as a partial interactive walkthrough and footage from the film. 32. The game's soundtrack, composed by Gustav Grufberg, was released by Vivendi as a free download on June 24, 2004. 33. Following rumors, Vivendi confirmed in July 2004 that a Windows port of Escape from Butcher Bay was in development, entitled The Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay Director's Cut. 34. The game features a higher display resolution, additional cigarette packs, and new scenes where Riddick steals mechanized riot armor. It includes developer commentary which details the game's creation and design decisions. 35. The game was released on December 8 in North America. 36. Expanded remake. We're very happy to be working in the Riddick universe again. Assault on Dock Athena gives us an opportunity to revisit the original game and share it with a new audience, as well as offer a continuation of the Butcher Bay gameplay and storyline. Ian Stevens, Starbreeze Studios, 37. Main article, The Chronicles of Riddick, Assault on Dock Athena. In May 2007, Vivendi announced that Escape from Butcher Bay was being remade by Starbreeze Studios for PC, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3. Entitled The Chronicles of Riddick, Assault on Dock Athena, the game was referred to by Vivendi as a reinvention of Escape from Butcher Bay. It would include a multiplayer mode and new single-player content. 37. It was planned that Vivendi subsidiary Sierra Entertainment would publish the game in late 2007. 38. 39. In December 2007, Activision and Vivendi Games merged to become Activision Blizzard Wink with a frown 40. The new company announced the dismissal of Assault on Dock Athena, Brutal Legend, Ghostbusters, the video game and others from its roster in July 2008. The titles were put up for sale to other publishers. 41, 42. In September 2008, Starbreeze Studios confirmed that the game was still in development, and that it was nearing completion. 43. The following month, Atari reportedly paid a flat fee for the publishing rights to Assault on Dock Athena and Ghostbusters, the video game Wink with a Frown 44. Atari later confirmed that it had picked up both titles. 39. The company also stated that it had struck a deal with Universal Studios to develop more Chronicles of Riddick games. 45. Assault on Dock Athena was released in April 2009 in North America, Europe, and Australia. 46. Escape from Butcher Bay's gameplay was compared to first-person shooters like Far Cry and Half-Life. 63. 64. And to stealth game series like Splinter Cell, 17, Metal Gear, 8, and Thief, 63, where viewers enjoyed the variety of gameplay elements. Frowny Face 15, 35, Game Informer's Jeremy Zoss noted that every aspect of play is expertly implemented, 49, and GameSpot's Greg Cassavan believes that the game effectively and innovatively combines excellent shooting, hand-to-hand combat, stealth, and adventure elements. 50. While the game's stealth mechanics were praised. 15. 63. Certain critics received its first-person shooter elements with less enthusiasm. 64. 65. Where viewers applauded the control scheme, such as the Xbox version's analog stick-based hand-to-hand combat. 2. 15. 49. 64. The implementation of Riddick's Eyeshine ability was also generally praised. 63. 66. But computer and video games believed that it was no different from night vision goggles in other first-person shooters, and said that it could have been developed into so much more. Gate. The game's visuals, particularly the Xbox versions, were acclaimed. 15. 49. 67. And compared to those of Doom 3 and Half-Life 2, 49, 61, 65, GameZone's Michael Lafferty said that the game's graphics take the genre to the next level. 53, the textures and lighting were cited as high points. 53, 65, particularly because of the gameplay role of shadows. 9, 68, character models and facial animations were considered highly realistic. Much praise was given to those of Riddick. 4, 6, 9, 15, GameSpot appreciated the developer's attention to detail. They noted that recent bullet holes glow red and smoke, but gradually cool and darken. 4, certain reviewers complained about graphical glitches, such as seams and clipping, 35, 49, and gave as an example the visibility of bullet tracers through walls. 50. The portrayal of Butcher Bay was considered convincing, and one-ups Sean Elliott compared it to the settings of the Alien franchise, 1:4:15. You can almost smell the thick stink of Butcher Bay and its inhabitants from the grime on the walls, dirty clothes of the inmates, and environmental textures. This place oozes with style and creates sense of reality in which it's easy to become immersed. Perry and Adams, IGN, 35. The ideal of Escape from Butcher Bay was generally well received, 53:54, and critics praised its voice acting. The performances of Vin Diesel and Cole Hauser were given special commendation, 49:69-70. In regard to the music, Firing Squad's Jakob Wojnarowicz stated, "It's not good enough to sweep you away, but it's also not bad enough to stick out like a sore thumb." 68, IGN said, "The music isn't memorable, but it's not bad." 16, the Sunday Herald's Sun called the voice acting, surprisingly good. 71, the game's length was commonly criticized. Reviewers noted that it could be completed in 8 to 15 hours, 1:49:54, and IGN said, "If you consider around 12 hours of gameplay sure, then Riddick is just that." 54, several reviewers were displeased by the game's lack of multiplayer components. Wink with a frown. 9:52:54, computer and video games referred to it as a missed opportunity. 6, Game Informer said, "Since the main quest is short, and there is no multiplayer, it's not a ton of game for your money." 49. Professor James Paul G., a researcher of video games, has used Escape from Butcher Bay in his studies. He discussed the relation of Garrett from Thief and the nameless soldier from Full Spectrum Warrior with the character of Riddick, saying that the games allow players to take a projective stance to the virtual world, but a stance that is rooted in the knowledge, values, and ways of seeing and being in the world of an authentic professional, an expert. 72. Sales. The Xbox version of the game had sold 159,000 units by August 2004, and was among the best-selling games on any platform during June 2004. Wink with a frown. 34:73. It was later re-released as a Platinum Hits title. 74. Conversely, the PC version sold 32,500 after 6 months on shelves. 75. In a December 2008 interview, Ian Stevens, head of Tigan Studios, said that sales were lackluster because consumers were not big on Vin Diesel and highly skeptical of a film property translating well as a video game. 76. Awards and accolades. Both versions of the game were given Editor's Choice Awards from IGN, 16:54, GameSpot, 3:50, and GameSpy, 12:51. GameSpot named it the best Xbox game of June 2004, 77, and the PC version was IGN's PC Game of the Month for December 2004, 78. It later won GameSpot's annual Most Surprisingly Good Game and Best Game Based on a TV or Film Property awards, and was a runner-up in the publication's Best Action Adventure Game, Best Original Music, Best Sound Effects, Best Story, Best Graphics, Technical, Best Voice Acting, and Most Innovative Game categories, as well as for Game of the Year. 79. The editors of Computer Gaming World presented Butcher Bay with their 2004 Action Game of the Year award and hailed it as the best movie prequel ever produced. 80. Computer Games Magazine named Escape from Butcher Bay the 10th best computer game of 2004, 81. IGN later ranked Butcher Bay 12th on its list of the 25 greatest Xbox games of all time, 82. Game Informer placed Escape from Butcher Bay as the 8th best on their list of 25 greatest Xbox games of all time, 83. Escape from Butcher Bay was nominated for GameSpot's Game of the Year award for 2004, 84, but it lost to World of Warcraft, 85. Computer and video games called the PC version the 98th best PC game of all time. 86. Billboard's Digital Entertainment Conference nominated Riddick as its best character in a game. 87. And a Golden Joystick Award for Unsung Hero Game of the Year. 88. Games Radar placed Escape from Butcher Bay in their Top 7 Movie Games That Don't Suck list, and said that Escape from Butcher Bay was a triumph on almost every level. 89. In 2013, IGN ranked Escape from Butcher Bay as the 27th greatest first-person shooter of all time. Riddick is transported to prison on the Hunter Gratzner, a commercial cargo spaceship. When the craft is damaged in the wake of a comet and makes an emergency crash landing on an isolated desert planet, Riddick escapes. However, when flying creatures begin attacking all the survivors, Riddick joins forces with the others to escape the planet. After the release of the sequel titled The Chronicles of Riddick, this film has been referred to as The Chronicles of Riddick, Pitch Black in subsequent home video re-releases. The Chronicles of Riddick, 2004. Main article, The Chronicles of Riddick. 5 years after the events of Pitch Black, Riddick evades bounty hunters and learns of a warrior army known as the Necromongers. He is captured and sent to the prison planet Crematoria, where he reunites with Jack from the first film. Riddick escapes and battles with the Necromonger fleet, which ends with the defeat of the Lord Marshal and Riddick taking his place. Riddick, 2013. Main article, Riddick, film. In 2006, Vin Diesel agreed to make a cameo in Universal's film The Fast and the Furious, Tokyo Drift in exchange for the ownership to the rights to the Riddick character. 2. Encouraged by high DVD sales and Diesel's newly restored box office success, David Twohy wrote a script for a third film in the Riddick series. 3, 4, 5. The film was produced by Media Rights Capital and distributed by Universal, and was released on September 6, 2013. Betrayed and left for dead by the Necromongers on a desolate planet, Riddick is forced to fight for survival against alien predators. He eventually realizes that an approaching storm will kill him and he must rely on mercenaries to escape. Riddick, Furya, TBA. Main article, Riddick, Furya. In January 2014, Diesel announced on his Facebook page that Universal wished to develop a fourth Riddick film, again prompted by robust DVD sales of the most recent film in the series. 6. In April 2016, Vin Diesel confirmed that he and writer-director David Twohy were developing a fourth Riddick movie titled The Chronicles of Riddick, Furya. In May 2016, he explained that production on The Chronicles of Riddick, Furya may begin in early 2017. In a video, Vin Diesel asked, "Are you guys excited to hear about Furya? Do you want to know where it all began with that dark character Riddick?" David Twohy confirmed that the new film would be rated R7. On July 21, 2019, Diesel announced on his Instagram that he had received Twohy's script for Riddick 4, Furya 8. In May 2022, an Instagram post from Vin Diesel also suggested that pre-production has moved on to the storyboarding phase. 9. Riddick, Furya. The fourth installment was announced in February 2023. Vin Diesel will again appear in the film and David Twohy has written the script and will direct the film. 10. Short films. The Chronicles of Riddick, Dark Fury, 2004. Main article, The Chronicles of Riddick, Dark Fury. Dark Fury, an anime-inspired made-for-DVD animated film, acts as a bridge between the live-action films of Pitch Black and The Chronicles of Riddick. It takes place shortly after Pitch Black and involves Riddick and the other two survivors of Pitch Black, Jack and Imam, and their run-in with a mercenary ship, as well as its captain who wishes to keep Riddick frozen as part of her collection of warriors from around the universe. It received mixed reviews. Video games. The Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay, 2004. Main article, The Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay. Escape from Butcher Bay is a video game based on the Riddick series, released for the Xbox and Windows PC. It acts as a prequel to Pitch Black, and involves Riddick's escape from the eponymous prison, Butcher Bay. It was well received and is often listed among the greatest video games. The Chronicles of Riddick, Assault on Dock Athena, 2009. Main article, The Chronicles of Riddick, Assault on Dock Athena. Assault on Dock Athena is a video game for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, Windows, and Mac OS X computers. It includes an enhanced remake of Escape from Butcher Bay, and covers events between the previous game and Pitch Black. Reviews were mostly positive. Riddick, The Mark Files, 2013. Riddick, The Mark Files is a touch-based stealth action game for Android and iOS devices. It was developed by Damon Core, a game developer founded by some of the original developers of the previous Riddick games, 11. Television. Into Pitch Black, 2000. Into Pitch Black is a sci-fi, formerly the Sci-Fi Channel, special which takes place before and after the events of Pitch Black. It mixes clips from Pitch Black into sequences focusing on a psychologist who studied Riddick in prison, the doctor who gave him his high-shine ability, and the lawman hiring a female mercenary to track Riddick months after Pitch Black. It shows several inconsistencies with the official storyline of the later sequels and video games and is non-canonical. 12. Future. In June 2004, David Twohy announced that he was writing the story basis for a sci-fi television film/pilot episode for a proposed television series based on the Riddick character Kyra, 13. In December 2015, Diesel announced on his Instagram account that both he and Twohy developed a TV series titled Merc City that will follow the mercs and bounty hunters of the Riddick franchise. 14. Novels. Pitch Black and The Chronicles of Riddick have received novelizations of their scripts, by Frank Lauria and Alan Dean Foster respectively. These expand on elements of the films, most notably Pitch Black providing character backstory for Riddick and The Chronicles of Riddick describing the Necromongers and their religion in greater detail. Pitch Black, 2000. The Chronicles of Riddick, 2004. Motion Comics. Pitch Black, Slam City, 2000. Pitch Black, Slam City is a short motion comic prequel to Pitch Black by animator Brian Murray with David Twohy, which had been available for download at the Pitch Black website. Slam City is in the form of an official, confidential prison record detailing Riddick's arrival and escape from the Ursa Luna Slam City facility in 11 hours and 22 minutes. Notably, it shows Riddick undergoing the surgery that gives him eyeshine, the ability to see in the dark, and paying for this with a pack of cool cigarettes, as mentioned in Pitch Black. William J. Johns is seen at the end of the film being charged with capturing Riddick. Riddick, Blindsided, 2013. Riddick, Blindsided is a motion comic based on storyboard scenes, 15, of the third film that didn't make the theatrical cut. It takes place shortly before the events of Riddick and bridges that film with the previous one. The director's cut of Riddick reinserts most of the material covered in Blindsided back into the film. It was released online, 16, a month before the release of the third film to generate buzz, 17, and it is also included with the movie's home video release. Richard B. Riddick, Vin Diesel, more commonly known as Riddick, is the protagonist of the series. He is shown to be a highly skilled predator, extremely mobile and stealthy, has a vast knowledge of how to kill almost any humanoid in a variety of ways, is an extreme survivalist, and is notoriously hard to contain. He is also self-admittedly a dangerous convict and murderer, yet despite this, he is sometimes shown to perform moral or even atypically heroic actions, usually against his own better judgment and survivalist nature. Riddick is a furyan, a member of a warrior race obliterated by a military campaign that left Furya desolate, and is one of the last of his kind. One of his most defining features on his eyes, a characteristic inherent in a certain caste of his species, the Alpha Furians, although he implies in Pitch Black that they were shined by a back-alley surgical operation. This allows him to see in the dark with no difficulty at all, but also renders his eyes incredibly sensitive to concentrated light, therefore he wears tinted welding goggles for protection. Riddick was once a mercenary, then part of a security force, 19, and later on a soldier. He is also an experienced pilot. Carolyn Fry, Radha Mitchell, is a docking pilot for the commercial transport ship Hunter Gratzna. She has a moment of moral weakness during the emergency landing attempt, intending to sacrifice the ship's passenger section to save herself. A relationship develops between Fry and Johns, until she finds out who he really is. The group, now down to Riddick, Fry, Jack and Imam, finds shelter inside a cave not far from the settlement. Riddick leaves them there and takes the power cells to the dropship. Inside the cave, they discover bioluminescent worms, which they stuff in bottles to use as light. Fry leaves the cave and finds Riddick powering up the ship, ready to leave without them. She pleads with him to help her rescue the others, but instead he just offers to take her with him. Eventually, Riddick has a change of heart, and they return for Imam and Jack and take them to the ship, but Riddick is separated from the group and wounded by the predators. Fry goes back to help Riddick, but is killed after finding him. William J. Johns, Kohlhauser, is a war veteran and mercenary who was trusted to track down Riddick after he escaped from Slam City and the primary human antagonist of Pitch Black. He captured Riddick and brought him to Butcher Bay, but upon discovering that he could not get as much of a reward as he wanted, helped Riddick escape. The Johns chase log on the Pitch Black special features tells of the events afterward. Riddick stabs Johns and leaves him for dead. Johns becomes a morphine addict after having it prescribed to him because of the wound, and then chases Riddick down while also avoiding other mercenaries on Riddick's trail. He eventually catches Riddick on the planet Aquila Major, featured in the opening scene of Chronicles of Riddick, by killing 2 children and threatening to kill 2 more unless Riddick surrenders. He gets a seat on the transport vessel Hunter Gratzna, which crashes onto Hades in Pitch Black. After the crash, Johns convinces the survivors to help him hunt down Riddick. Johns initially disbelieves Riddick's claims of the bioraptors. After their discovery, Johns makes a deal with Riddick, so they could work together to survive. Riddick ultimately betrays Johns when Johns decides to use Jack as bait for the bioraptors, resulting in Johns and Riddick fighting. Johns is defeated and left to the bioraptors, one of which attacks Johns and rips him apart. Abul, the Imam, Walid, Keith David, is an imam who was looking for New Mecca when the Hunter Gratzner crashed in Pitch Black. He was traveling with 3 young boys, and despite everything he went through, including the deaths of the boys, he never lost his faith and believed there was goodness in Riddick. Imam was one of the 3 survivors of the first movie along with Jack and Riddick. Jackby, Bad/Kyra, Rhiannell Griffith and Alexa Davalos, is a character from the first 2 Riddick movies, see above. In Pitch Black she went by the name Jack after the crash of the Hunter Gratzner and pretended to be a boy so that everyone would take her seriously. Jack befriended Riddick and was enamored by him. In Chronicles of Riddick, it is revealed that Riddick left her with the mom behind on Helion Prime. Wanting to find Riddick, she joined a mercenary crew, got caught and got sent to one of the worst prisons in existence, crematoria. According to what she told Riddick later, she did what he said in an attempt to get the eye shine like him. She killed a few people, got sent to a prison where it said you can never escape from but find a doctor that could do an eye shine. Siberius Fako, Paul Urban, is a necromonger commander from the Chronicles of Riddick, serving as Xylaw's right-hand man. Though sent to kill Riddick, confused of his leader's sudden fear, Fako uses it as an excuse to get close enough to assassinate Xylaw to become Lord Marshal. However, once the chance to kill Xylaw presents itself, Riddick beats Fako to the punch and becomes Lord Marshal. But when Riddick eventually renounces the title and gives it to him in exchange for an escort to take him to Furya, unbeknownst to Fako, instead of Furya, his lieutenant takes Riddick to the planet where Riddick takes place and tries to assassinate him as the lieutenant disagrees with what he perceives to be a weakness on the part of Fako. Alexander Toombs, Nick Shinlund, is the mercenary from Chronicles of Riddick and Dark Fury. Toombs is shown to be highly arrogant and incompetent, failing to capture Riddick and having his ship stolen from him, and once again being humiliated during Riddick's escape from crematoria. Toombs was last seen locked inside the crematoria kennels surrounded by vicious guard dog creatures. His current status is unknown, but it can be assumed that he was never rescued and is most likely dead. Xylaw, or Lord Marshal, Comb Fury, is the main antagonist of Chronicles of Riddick. Before Riddick's birth, Xylaw consulted an elemental seer, who told him that a Furyan male would be born that would kill him in the future. In retaliation, Xylaw attacked Furya in an attempt to massacre all male children, going so far as to personally strangle newborn infants with their own umbilical cords. He strangled Riddick with his umbilical cord and believed him dead, but Riddick actually survived. At some point, he traveled to the Underverse and afterwards returned not completely human. He is referred to by the necromongers as the Holy Half-Dead and possesses powers such as incredible strength, the ability to pull souls from bodies and to separate his soul partially from his body and then pull his body where his soul is, resulting in a kind of super speed that makes him hard to hit. Shira, Kristen Lehman, is a Furyan seen in the director's cut of the Chronicles of Riddick. In the video game The Chronicles of Riddick, escaped from Butcher Bay. Purifier, Linus Roach, was a member of the Necromonger fleet. It is revealed that he, too, was Furyan like Riddick, before being converted. When Riddick falls unconscious after fighting the Necromonger soldiers chasing him, the Purifier pulls him into the safety of the hangar and tells Riddick, "We all began as something else." Regretting what he has done under a faith he did not believe in, the Purifier tells Riddick that the Furyan in him hopes that Riddick goes after the Lord Marshal before committing suicide by walking into the sunlight of crematoria. Pulp Joe, Willis Burks too, is a hermit and former bovine veterinarian that lives in the sewers of Butcher Bay. After Riddick retrieved his radio from the sewers, he heals Riddick, and is credited with giving him his high shine that he uses throughout the franchise to see in the dark, but may not be the actual source, as the prior information comes from the 2004 video game The Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay, which may or may not be canon. Boss Johns, Matt Nable, is William J. Johns' father and a mercenary who seeks revenge on Riddick for his son's death. A welding helmet is a piece of personal protective equipment used by welders to protect the user from concentrated light and flying particles. Different welding processes need stronger lens shades with auto-darkening filters, while goggles suffice for others. OSHA and ANSI regulate this technology, defining shades based on the transmittance of light. Purpose: trainees wearing protective goggles while learning to weld, 1943. Welding helmets are most commonly used in arc welding processes such as shielded metal arc welding, gas tungsten arc welding, and gas metal arc welding. They are necessary to prevent arc eye, a painful condition where the cornea is inflamed. Welding helmets can also prevent retina burns, which can lead to a loss of vision. Both conditions are caused by unprotected exposure to the highly concentrated infrared and ultraviolet light emitted by the welding arc. 1. Ultraviolet emissions from the welding arc can also damage uncovered skin, such as of the face and neck, causing a sunburn-like condition in a relatively short period of welding. In addition to the radiation, dashes or splashes can also be a hazard to the skin and the eyes. 2. All welding helmets are susceptible to damages such as cracks that can compromise the protection from ultraviolet and infrared rays. In addition to protecting the eyes, the helmet protects the face from hot metal sparks generated by the arc and from UV damage. When overhead welding, a leather skull cap and shoulder cover are used to prevent head and shoulder burns. 3. Design: most welding helmets include a window, visor, covered with a filter called a lens shade, through which the welder can see to work. The window may be made of tinted glass, tinted plastic, or a variable density filter made from a pair of polarized lenses. Different lens shades are needed for different welding processes. For example, metal inert gas, MIG, and tungsten inert gas, TIG, welding are low-intensity processes, so a lighter lens shade will be preferred. Oxyfuel welding goggles. Welding goggles are protective eyewear that has dark shading, meant to protect eyes from the bright light produced by oxyfuel welding and allied processes, and also from sparks and debris. For open electrical arcs, as created by arc welding and other processes, generate much higher amounts of light and UV radiation, requiring the whole face to be protected. Most welding goggles do not have a dark enough shade for arc welding. Speed glass welding helmet. The modern welding helmet used today was first introduced in 1937 by Wilson Products. 5. In 1981, Swedish manufacturer Hornell International, now owned by 3M. 6. Introduced an LCD electronic shutter that darkens automatically when sensors detect the bright welding arc. 7. The Speedglass auto darkening filter. With such electronic auto darkening helmets, the welder no longer has to get ready to weld and then nod their head to lower the helmet over their face. The advantage is that the welder does not need to adjust the position of welding helmet manually, which not only saves time but also reduces the risk of exposure to the harmful light generated by the welding process. Regulation. In the United States, the industry standard for welding helmets is ANSI 87.1+, which specifies performance of a wide variety of eye protection devices. The standard requires that auto darkening helmets provide full protection against both UV and IR even when they are not in the darkened state. 7. The standard is voluntary, so buyers should confirm that the helmet is ANSI 87.1 compliant, indicated by appropriate labeling. United States OSHA requirements for welding helmets are derived from standards like ANSI 49.1, Safety in Welding and Cutting, Section 7, Protection of Personnel, 8, and ANSI 89.1, Safety Requirements for Industrial Head Protection, 9. OSHA also recommends certain shade numbers based on the welds type and current rating, 10. The 1967 edition of ANSI Z49.1.7.2.2.10 specifies that Hall filter lenses and plates shall meet the test for transmission of radiant energy prescribed in paragraph 6.3.4.6 of the Safety Code for Head, Eye, and Respiratory Protection, USA Standard C2.1-1959.8. As of 2023, OSHA's website provides standards for minimum protective shades under Standard 1910.133, Eye and Face Protection, Section A. 5.11. As a rule of thumb, start with a shade that is too dark to see the weld zone. Then go to a lighter shade which gives sufficient view of the weld zone without going below the minimum. In oxyfuel gas welding or cutting where the torch produces a high yellow light, it is desirable to use a filter lens that absorbs the yellow or sodium line in the visible light of the spectrum operation. Personal protective equipment, PPE, is protective clothing, helmets, goggles, or other garments or equipment designed to protect the wearer's body from injury or infection. The hazards addressed by protective equipment include physical, electrical, heat, chemical, biohazards, and airborne particulate matter. Protective equipment may be worn for job-related occupational safety and health purposes, as well as for sports and other recreational activities. Protective clothing is applied to traditional categories of clothing, and protective gear applies to items such as pads, guards, shields, or masks, and others. PPE suits can be similar in appearance to a cleanroom suit. The purpose of personal protective equipment is to reduce employee exposure to hazards when engineering controls and administrative controls are not feasible or effective to reduce these risks to acceptable levels. PPE is needed when there are hazards present. PPE has the serious limitation that it does not eliminate the hazard at the source and may result in employees being exposed to the hazard if the equipment fails. 1. Any item of PPE imposes a barrier between the wearer/user and the working environment. This can create additional strains on the wearer, impair their ability to carry out their work, and create significant levels of discomfort. Any of these can discourage wearers from using PPE correctly, therefore placing them at risk of injury, ill health, or, under extreme circumstances, death. Good ergonomic design can help to minimize these barriers and can therefore help to ensure safe and healthy working conditions through the correct use of PPE. Practices of occupational safety and health can use hazard controls and interventions to mitigate workplace hazards, which pose a threat to the safety and quality of life of workers. The hierarchy of hazard controls provides a policy framework which ranks the types of hazard controls in terms of absolute risk reduction. At the top of the hierarchy are elimination and substitution, which remove the hazard entirely or replace the hazard with a safer alternative. If elimination or substitution measures cannot be applied, engineering controls and administrative controls, which seek to design safer mechanisms and coach safer human behavior, are implemented. Personal protective equipment ranks last on the hierarchy of controls, as the workers are regularly exposed to the hazard, with a barrier of protection. The hierarchy of controls is important in acknowledging that, while personal protective equipment has tremendous utility, it is not the desired mechanism of control in terms of worker safety. History. A 1568 painting depicting beekeepers in protective clothing, by Peter Bruegel the Elder. Early PPEs such as body armor, boots, and gloves focused on protecting the wearer's body from physical injury. The plague doctors of 16th century Europe also wore protective uniforms consisting of a full-length gown, helmet, glass eye coverings, gloves, and boots, see plague doctor costume, to prevent contagion when dealing with plague victims. These were made of thick material which was then covered in wax to make it water-resistant. A mask with a beak-like structure was filled with pleasant-smelling flowers, herbs, and spices to prevent the spread of miasma, the pre-scientific belief of bad smells which spread disease through the air. 2. In more recent years, scientific personal protective equipment is generally believed to have begun with the cloth face masks promoted by Wu Lingtai in the 1910-11 Manchurian pneumonic plague outbreak. Although some doctors and scientists of the time doubted the efficacy of face masks in preventing the spread of that disease since they didn't believe it was transmitted through the air. 3. Types. Personal protective equipment can be categorized by the area of the body protected, by the type of hazard, and by the type of garment or accessory. A single item, for example, boots, may provide multiple forms of protection: a steel toe cap and steel insoles for protection of the feet from crushing or puncture injuries, impervious rubber and lining for protection from water and chemicals, high reflectivity and heat resistance for protection from radiant heat, and high electrical resistivity for protection from electric shock. The protective attributes of each piece of equipment must be compared with the hazards expected to be found in the workplace. More breathable types of personal protective equipment may not lead to more contamination but do result in greater user satisfaction. 4. Respirators are protective breathing equipment, which protect the user from inhaling contaminants in the air, thus preserving the health of their respiratory tract. There are two main types of respirators. One type of respirator functions by filtering out chemicals and gases, or airborne particles, from the air breathed by the user. 5. The filtration may be either passive or active, powered. Gas masks and particulate respirators, like N95 masks, 6, are examples of this type of respirator. A second type of respirator protects users by providing clean, respirable air from another source. This type includes airline respirators and self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBA. 5. In work environments, respirators are relied upon when adequate ventilation is not available or other engineering control systems are not feasible or inadequate. 5. In the United Kingdom, an organization that has extensive expertise in respiratory protective equipment is the Institute of Occupational Medicine. This expertise has been built on a long-standing and varied research program that has included the setting of workplace protection factors to the assessment of efficacy of masks available through high-street retail outlets. Citation needed. The Health and Safety Executive, HSE, NHS Health Scotland and Healthy Working Lives, HWL, have jointly developed the RPE, Respiratory Protective Equipment, Selector tool, which is web-based. This interactive tool provides descriptions of different types of respirators and breathing apparatuses, as well as do's and don'ts for each type. 7. In the United States, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH, provides recommendations on respirator use, in accordance to NIOSH Federal Respiratory Regulations 42 CFR Part 84. 5. The National Personal Protective Technology Laboratory, NPPTL, of NIOSH is tasked towards actively conducting studies on respirators and providing recommendations. 8. Surgical masks. See also, source control, respiratory disease. Surgical masks are sometimes considered as PPE, but are not considered as respirators, being unable to stop submicron particles from passing through, and also having unrestricted air flow at the edges of the masks. 6. 9. Surgical masks are not certified for the prevention of tuberculosis. 10. Skin protection. A man wearing a white lab coat reaches over a beaker containing white powder on a balance. A worker wearing a respirator, lab coat, and gloves while weighing carbon nanotubes. A close-up of a person's arm reaching into a bucket filled with a black material. This is an incorrect use of personal protective equipment, because the gap between the glove and the lab coat exposes the wrist to hazardous materials. Occupational skin diseases such as contact dermatitis, skin cancers, and other skin injuries and infections are the second most common type of occupational disease and can be very costly. 11. Skin hazards, which lead to occupational skin disease, can be classified into 4 groups. Chemical agents can come into contact with the skin through direct contact with contaminated surfaces, deposition of aerosols, immersion, or splashes. 11. Physical agents such as extreme temperatures and ultraviolet or solar radiation can be damaging to the skin over prolonged exposure. 11. Mechanical trauma occurs in the form of friction, pressure, abrasions, lacerations, and contusions. 11. Biological agents such as parasites, microorganisms, plants, and animals can have varied effects when exposed to the skin. 11. Any form of PPE that acts as a barrier between the skin and the agent of exposure can be considered skin protection. Because much work is done with the hands, gloves are an essential item in providing skin protection. Some examples of gloves commonly used as PPE include rubber gloves, cut-resistant gloves, chainsaw gloves, and heat-resistant gloves. For sports and other recreational activities, many different gloves are used for protection, generally against mechanical trauma. Other than gloves, any other article of clothing or protection worn for a purpose serve to protect the skin. Lab coats, for example, are worn to protect against potential splashes of chemicals. Face shields serve to protect one's face from potential impact hazards, chemical splashes, or possible infectious fluid. Many migrant workers need training in PPE for heat-related illnesses prevention, HRI. Based on study results, research identified some potential gaps in heat safety education. While some farm workers reported receiving limited training on pesticide safety, others did not. This could be remedied by incoming groups of farm workers receiving video and in-person training on HRI prevention. These educational programs for farm workers are most effective when they are based on health behavior theories, use adult learning principles, and employ train-the-trainer approaches. 12. A PPE station, containing eye protection and earplugs, as well as a place to dispose of dirty glasses. Industrial noise is often overlooked as an occupational hazard, as it is not visible to the eye. Overall, about 22 million workers in the United States are exposed to potentially damaging noise levels each year. 15. Occupational hearing loss accounted for 14% of all occupational illnesses in 2007, with about 23,000 cases significant enough to cause permanent hearing impairment. 15. About 82% of occupational hearing loss cases occurred to workers in the manufacturing sector. 15. In the U.S., the Occupational Safety and Health Administration establishes occupational noise exposure standards. 16. The National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health recommends that worker exposures to noise be reduced to a level equivalent to 85 dBA for 8 hours to reduce occupational noise-induced hearing loss. 17. PPE for hearing protection consists of earplugs and earmuffs. Workers who are regularly exposed to noise levels above the NIOSH recommendation should be provided with hearing protection by the employers, as they are a low-cost intervention. A personal attenuation rating can be objectively measured through a hearing protection fit testing system. The effectiveness of hearing protection varies with the training offered on their use. 18. On January 2025, NIOSH published a science policy update recommending employers use individual, quantitative fit testing to evaluate the attenuation received by workers from their hearing protection devices.